Teams are finally starting to shape up in college football for the 2026 season. So here's every team that made the playoffs last year based on their odds to return to the college football playoff. We'll start at number 12 with Tulane. A lot going against the Green Wave. First, they have to fight for that group of 5 bid that so many other teams are fighting for, but also they lose head coach John Summerall and several big-time impact players. It's going to be an uphill battle for them under new head coach Will Hall. Next up is James Madison. They face the same reality as Tulane, where there's just a lot of teams competing for that same playoff spot, and they also lost their head coach. It's true that both programs have shown an ability to reload. I'd say James Madison maybe a little bit more so, but it's still going to be a really difficult climb. Next up is Ole Miss. They stick out like a sore thumb compared to the rest of the teams on this list. The turmoil they experienced in the offseason. They're going to have Pete Golding headed into his first season as a head coach. There's a lot that can go wrong for them, including Trinidad Chambliss not actually getting eligibility for this year as there's ongoing legal battles. Next up is where I'll put Oklahoma. The Sooners just had a lot less disruption during the offseason. They still have a very high floor. They'll likely have a great defense. The offense has a lot of upside still, and so if they can figure that out finally this year, they could have an even higher floor than they previously had. Texas A&M has been leveling up every year under Mike Elko, and they're a team that's going to be in the playoff conversation again, but their schedule, it gets pretty brutal this year, and so that's the biggest thing probably working against them. Next up is Miami. The Hurricanes have a ton to be excited about this year. Fresh off of a national title game appearance, they landed arguably the best quarterback in the portal. They have so many great players returning. However, the biggest thing working against them is that we haven't seen them do a complete regular season under Mario Cristobal with no faltering against inferior competition. And so until they do that, I think their floor is just a little bit lower than some of these other teams. There has been a lot of Crimson Tide slander in college football over the last couple of seasons, which I totally get. They dominated the sport for so long. When you see them bleed, you get excited. But last season, they still made the SEC title game despite all their flaws, and they've gotten better each season under DeBoer. I think they're going to have a really great shot at returning to the CFP again. The single biggest thing working in Texas Tech's favor this year is also the biggest thing working against them. They have a relatively light schedule. If they win the Big 12, they're in the CFP. However, if they falter even once in conference play and they miss the Big 12 title, they're not making the playoffs with one loss even. That schedule is just too weak. What Georgia continues to do under Kirby Smart is just absurdly impressive, and they'll be in a position to make the college football playoffs again, and they'll be expected to. However, an SEC schedule is just always going to be less likely than a Big 10 schedule to break through, and that's why Georgia doesn't crack the top 3 here. Next up is Indiana. Fresh off a national title, they have an advantageous schedule. They killed it in the portal. However, we've never seen this program have to reload at this level. Obviously, Curt Cignetti continues to defy everything with what he does, but it's going to be a huge test for Indiana, perhaps the biggest test in program history. There's a lot to love this season about what the Oregon Ducks bring back. Obviously, they have a super high floor with all their talent. However, they did lose both coordinators this offseason. That's the one thing to consider. But number 1 is Ohio State. There's so much to consider, but in terms of their path to the playoffs, their talent level, and everything their program has shown over the last couple of seasons, they seem like the closest thing to a shoo-in in the college football playoffs.